I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories, like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the Empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Overthrows podcast. I'm Behram, who you can find at DefMango on Twitter. And with me, as always, is Jarrod Kimber, who you can find literally everywhere. We've got a few people in the comment section already. Pi Alpha SB is here, Eddie is here, Abdul TS, and then Samit Khan as well with a super chat that we will be taking later. And the premise of this Overthrows podcast as well, Pakistan versus West Indies. Pakistan have trounced the West Indies by 127 runs via spin in the first test at Multan, which Jarrod was practically over in 2 days because of the massive fog delays on day one, which is an interesting thing in 2025, right? And I mean, look, this ended up being the shortest test match to have ever been completed in Pakistan with the result. And the surface was very, very interesting. I know Varun has been like completely nerding out on it, but from what I could tell, if you actually looked at the pitch, if you looked at the pitch, there was like 3 different colors. Either end was roughed up, and then, you know, the ball was turning from ball 1, basically, which we did expect after they greenhoused it. And then also, you know, early on in the test match, it seemed to be a pace-friendly rank turner. But based on what I've been told by Varun is that on one end, the ball was keeping low, and on one end, there was more bounce than usual. So very interesting sort of rank turner.
I mean, I think the one thing that we know is it was very unlikely to be a draw pitch. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think we've gone a long way away from that. I didn't see any of this, so you're going to have to fill me in on absolutely everything. I think day one when it started, I had to record the Bumble that day in the morning, and then that was the one day I had time, I think, to watch some of it, and then there was fog after that bit. So I haven't seen anything. People got wickets, so tell me what I need to know. So, I'm the audience here.
The general theme is that we've talked about how Pakistan was a team which struggled to take 20 wickets in home test matches. And now we have 3 home tests in Pakistan in which Pakistan have taken 60 wickets, and all 60 of them have fallen to spin. 28 of them have fallen to Sajid Khan, and Sajid was player of the match in this game as well. Took 4 for 65 in the first innings. The first 4 wickets fell to Sajid. And then in his second dig, he came and took 5 for 50 as well. So 9 for 115 for him in total. His celebration was out in full pomp. Babar and Rizwan were replicating it as well. And he is kind of at the center of Pakistan trying to rebuild their identity as a test team at home.
I mean, we know he's a good bowler. Are we still worried that... I mean, okay, let me put it this way. What if he sprains his ankle?
Yeah, I mean, that will be a very tough proposition. And I mean, I mentioned in the preview how Pakistan potentially have missed an opportunity over here to blood some young spinners or some spin bowling all-rounder. Honestly, Khurram Shahzad bowled, 1 over in this game, right? The lone seamer. You might as well have one of those guys in, right? To kind of roll their arm over. And you might not even need their bowling because Sajid and Noman alone are prolific, right?
Abrar bowled what?
Yes.
1.5 overs in the first innings. And then he opened the bowling in the second innings. Take me through that. What was the thought process there, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the thought process was. I just think that they were quite certain that Khurram Shahzad will not have a bowl. But yeah, he didn't bowl much. I think 8 deliveries in the first innings, took a wicket, and then came back to take, 4 for 27. And in a period of play where Pakistan were trying to wrap things up, he took 2 and 2. And I'm really personally happy for Abrar because this is a guy who physically broke down in that Multan test versus England, right? He went to the hospital and we were unsure of whether or not we'll ever get to see him play test cricket again, because a lot of people were saying, oh, this guy's just good enough for limited overs. So he ends up with 5 wickets in this game. And then Noman Ali also took a fifer in the first innings, 5 for 39 and a wicket later. So these guys shared the spoils entirely. But like I will say this, I don't want to take anything away from them, but this sort of surface, you don't need to be an exceptional spinner to take wickets. That's the catch.
I mean, you say that. Gudakesh Modi, how many wickets did he end up with? It just tells you how much his form's disappeared. He got 2 wickets in this game. So I'm watching from the outside, as I said before. There's a collapse on day 1, and they're, 46 for 4?
Yep.
Then there's a very big partnership. Saud Shakil and Mohammad Rizwan both make runs. That partnership in the end is the difference between the two sides, isn't it?
Yeah, 141 runs that they strung up. As you said, 46 for 4. That's where Pakistan stood, and it looked to be all doom and gloom thereon. And it's such a massive
Sorry, you said the
anomaly.
partnership was 141.
Yes.
So that's more than either of the innings, right? That were played.
Yeah.
But
Both
by the West Indies.
innings.
Yeah.
Yep. Their first inning score was 137, and then I think they fell for 129 or something. I can't quite recall. Somewhere around over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's such a massive anomaly because, on a surface where stringing up 30 runs as a partnership is tough, they put on 141. And you're correct to say that, that's what ultimately won Pakistan the game. Sajid Khan, who, when he was, being awarded the Player of the Match award, he also kind of said that, look, I'm happy with my performance, but it all comes down to the way our batters batted. And Saud Shakil, I mean, this guy, I think, is Pakistan's best player of spin bowling. He is also a very solid shout for Pakistan's best red ball batter in contemporary cricket. He swept well as usual, used soft hands, and he was sweeping out of the rough, which is always a smart idea. And I mean, you look at his pokes and cuts on the offside. He's a very busy batter. Sometimes he'll use his feet as well and come down the track. 84 runs on this surface was akin to gold dust. And I mean, ever since his debut, Jarrod, he's scored the most runs for Pakistan, right? And which is like 1,600 plus. He's also scored the most 50s and halves or tons. And I mean, it really is a phenomenal story. He's averaging 52 now in Test cricket, and the sample size is quite well. It's not like a small sample size. Like Varun is saying, he averages 85 versus spin. And what is it, Varun? Like 30 odd versus fast bowling? I think so. I think it's somewhere around.
Yeah, he certainly struggles a lot more against it. So the first innings is that partnership, and then the second innings is what? The opening partnership is the one that. Because they collapse, right? Like it's not as if we're sitting here saying they made a lot of runs. They didn't make a lot of runs.
It's interesting. So 46 for 4 to 187 for 4 to 230 all out, right? So it was just that partnership in every literal sense. And then in the second innings, you're right. Like Herrera and Shan Masood put up an opening partnership. They ended the day at 107 for 3. And then when I woke up, because I missed a very slight portion of this game, Pakistan were all out already. But yeah, credit to Shan Masood. I think he kind of cracked it on the surface in the third innings where he was like, I'm going to have to attack the spinners. And he used his feet, came down the track and charged the spinners. At times he rocked back. He was going for big hits and he ended up with 52 runs. Weirdly enough, he's a man in form right now. And then I would say Rizwan played really, really well as well in the first innings because we all know that he's a busy batter, right? But he was using his feet a lot, far more than Saud. And he sweeps the ball as well. He's one of Pakistan's most exceptional batters in tough conditions. And he was taking calculated risks versus spin, which is the only way to go about on a rank turner, in my opinion. And yeah, scored 71 as well. So literally 3 innings in there, in 2 entire batting innings for Pakistan, which was ultimately, sizable enough to win them this test by a massive margin.
Yeah, because it's not as if it ends up being close. So in the first innings, West Indies is basically saved by the 9, 10, 11, right? Who I think isn't it the first time in history 9, 10, 11 have been the 3 top scorers in an innings or something crazy like that. Is that because the ball got soft, or is it that just luck? Because they weren't actually in that long, right? Like, it was like the 25th over or something when the innings finished, wasn't it? Wasn't there no overs bowled in that game?
Yeah, so
no, in that innings?
It was basically the shortest ever innings in terms of overs in Pakistan, first innings, that is. And yeah, I mean, they were just chancing their arm. Jomel Vorakan has this back of the bat reverse sweep. You've got to watch this. It's an absolute spectacle. And then Jaden Seals was kind of slogging it as well, and they got some quick runs, which eventually, cut down on the inevitable lead that they were going to concede. And it was an interesting passage of play. Jomel Vorakan had a very interesting game. So he scores this quick fire 31, unbeaten. And in the first innings, he takes probably one of the worst 3-fers I've ever seen. on a turning track, right? 3 for 69, but all of those wickets were just, the batters kind of gave it away. Then he goes on to take 7 for 32 and ends the game at 10 for 101. And to your point, when the surface is ragging, well, Jamel Warrican is a handful, and he proved that. He was West Indies' best performer.
Okay, let's say, we'll get on to West Indies in a moment, because I think there's a couple of other players I want to ask about as well. But if you run this game back through again and the West Indies batted first. This is the thing at the moment, right? Like, they've done it against England. They've done it against West Indies. England can't play spin. West Indies, is a very poor side. Not bad when it's seeming around, but certainly in these conditions, not as suited to them. It just feels like they're doing exactly what India did, but without like great all-rounders or Bumrah or, do you know what I mean? And so, like, I look at this scorecard completely not having watched it. I know you've watched every ball. For some reason, you weren't let into the ground, but we'll work that out for the next time. But I look at it just as a scoreboard hawk, right? And my first thing is, if you make 230, then the other team makes 137, then you make 157, and the other team makes 123, then batting second is clearly a real disadvantage here. So if Jamal Warrican bowls in the second innings rather than is that what they're setting themselves up for? Are they setting themselves up to lose a game that they probably would beat West Indies most times because they're making the conditions too random?
I think what they're banking on over here is the fact, let's not forget that when the surface was ragging in Rawalpindi in that last test versus England, Pakistan did bat last and Pakistan won that test.
They did.
Right?
But let's also remember that England cannot play very well against spin everywhere. And so, that's what I mean. Those are the two teams. Well, what I'm really asking is, are they giving West Indies a chance of winning a test that West Indies wouldn't normally win? And going ahead, will this work against better teams who can actually play spin and have good spinners themselves? Like, if you go up against, I don't know, Kuhneman, Lyon, I'm forgetting the Murphy. If you go up against Maharaj, Harmer, Dane Pete, like, do you know what I mean?
Up against just Prabhat Jayasuriya.
Prabhat Jayasuriya on his own. If you go up against the great Mitch Santner and Ajaz Patel, do you know what? Like, at a certain point, do you not think, like, if two of West Indies spinners turned up in this game, I wonder again what the result would be. Like, you're putting a lot of pressure on two guys. Fine, they're doing brilliantly at the moment. Good on them. And then you've had one good partnership and one okay partnership to win the game. It just feels like it's such a house of cards. Like, this is so different to what India was doing, right? Because India were basically like, if you want to turn up with two spinners better than Jadeja and Ashwin, and someone like Rohit and Rishabh Pant who are going to cause you other issues, and then we're also going to bat down to number 8 or number 9, good luck. That's not what this is. No, this is just like, we're just going to make the pitch spin and hope that the teams we're playing can't handle it. And more often than not, the toss goes the way we want it to.
Yeah, this is a proper roll of the dice because of the toss, right? Even if they defeated England in that last test, to your point, England can't play spin, especially when they try to Baz ball it, versus spin. And I think the way Pakistan are looking at it is that they weren't able to take 20 wickets in any of those previous home tests for a good 2-3 years.
I get it.
Now it's not an issue anymore. So even Shan Masood was like, as long as it gets me 20 wickets, I don't care. And I don't even think they care about the pitch rating. I think it might still be satisfactory because that's what the previous two surfaces got. You never know though, because this test match, in every essence of it, lasted just 2 days. And it is the shortest test to be completed in history in Pakistan.
I think if you look at Varun's stats, you shouldn't have one end where the ball's spinning sideways and rolling along the ground. Like, do you know what I mean? You can sometimes have a good end and a bad end in Test cricket, and we don't talk about it enough. And it's something I talk about a lot on TalkSport. Of like, guys, don't just bowl whoever you want from that end. Save your good bowlers for this end, and you'll win. And you'll do very well. But it's not something we talk about enough in cricket. You shouldn't have one end that's like that, and then the other end that's playing more normally, though. And I think that's a really important thing if I'm looking at it, and that's why I've been looking at data. Right, rather than just, I'm not worried about it being the shortest test in Pakistan history. I am worried about the fact that it won it. Is Mash in the chat?
Mash is over here.
Jeez, come on now.
We should
have just got him on. He would have watched more of this than I would have. He would actually. I'm just like, what about this? And you're like, well, actually, if you watch the cricket, Jarrod, you wouldn't think that.
So Mash is saying, or maybe it's Santoki, we don't know, that this is no different to asking a team to play on a very seam-friendly pitch in his mind, and it's and the good batters will find a way. I think that's a very important point. What he says.
That's not what we're talking about here. Yeah.
In terms of Pakistan's strategy or approach, where they're literally like Akib ball is spin to win in every essence of it, right? What they're thinking over here probably is that they've got batters like Saud Shakil, Mohammad Rizwan, Kamran Ghulam, Salman Ali Agha, all of those guys are really, really good versus spin. So if your batters are good players of spin and then potentially you can bowl out the opposition, that sets up Pakistan for victory. But I do agree. Every now and then you lose the toss, you're batting last. You're bound to falter. You can't win all of those games.
That's what I'm talking about. I think Mash is going from the traditional thing of you shouldn't have a go at someone for doing a spinning pitch if you don't have a go at them for doing a seaming pitch, which is fine. That isn't what we're talking about here at all. What I'm talking about is when you get it, you look at this scorecard and you say, what happens if West Indies bat first? Pakistan are a better side than the West Indies, especially in these conditions. Are you giving the poorer side a chance if the toss goes against you?
Yeah.
Right.
You are.
And that for me is if at the moment, right, let's just go out on a limb and say that Sajid is as good as we think he is. Right. There's not a lot of data to go on, but I like the way he bowls. No, man, I'm a little bit more in the middle of, but Sajid, let's say he's as good as we think he is and he can out bowl people. You don't need the wicket to be this full on.
Yeah.
Right. You can pull it back a couple of bits and then say to the West Indies, okay, now you're going to have to score 300 to 350 to win this game. The West Indies shouldn't be in a situation where they fluke 200 in the first innings. Right.
Yeah.
Let's say their tail went on for another. Let's say the top order put together 120 and the tail then smashes 80 or 90. They might have been in this game for no reason at all. Once you make it that random, you take away some of your opposition. And I get it because I do understand the general principle of what they're doing. And I was one who was kind of against it, but like now I get it a lot more. But I don't know if I would do it every single time. And there's a difference between making the pitch spin and making it challenging and what this game is, because sometimes you just turn it from an advantage into a 50-50 situation. And it's why India lost some of those test matches when they did lose tests. India probably shouldn't have lost to any of those teams, realistically, right? But they made it so random at times that Tom Hartley can take all those wickets. And, and that's the sort of situation. And that's what we're talking about with Pakistan here.
I mean, it's a strategy that could definitely come back and bite you in the ass. And I mean, if you think about it, 19 wickets fell on day 2. That is a record. 19 wickets have never fallen in a single day of Test match cricket in Pakistan. And then day 3, 17 fell. That's 36 wickets in 2 days. And that is literally the definition of a shootout. You do make it that random. And if you remember versus England, at least on day 1, the batters had something in it for them. This surface, the ball was turning from ball 1. So that is a massive or very considerable difference between those surfaces and this one, because this was a far bigger rank turner, in my opinion. I mean, if the test match is lasting 2 days, that kind of, it paints a picture. But yes, I mean, versus better teams who play spin better and who have better spinners, Pakistan, I don't think, can employ this sort of strategy. So, for instance, South Africa is coming next in 10 months' time, right? They'll have
really
a few spinners, in particular Maharaj, and Pakistani batters. They struggle big time versus left arm orthodox spin, right?
And that's what I'm talking about. And you also don't want to be in a situation. This is a 2-test series, right?
Yes.
You don't want to be in a situation where the toss goes against you and Justin Greaves, right? Or Kavim Hodge. Actually, there's a couple of guys there who just make a 70 or an 80, right?
Yeah.
And it changes the game. You want those guys to have to make 150 or 160 to change the game, and then say, Sajid's going to bowl for the next couple of days. Now, we know why teams have gone towards this, because we saw it with Ashwin and Jadeja. You don't want Sajid to have to bowl for 4 days, right? Because eventually it's just going to wear him down, right? That was the whole thing with India. The difference with India is they had more spin options. They had backup spin options, but they also had backups with their batting when their top order fell apart, right? This isn't quite the same situation with Pakistan. I'm not faulting them for winning games. They're actually winning test matches after, let's be honest, it hurt our eyes to watch Pakistan play at home for a long period of time. Like, well done to them. I'm just saying.
I was questioning my life choices at that moment when I was watching those games on flat decks, right? I was like, why did I want to come into this profession?
This is wrong. I'm an idiot. But what I'm saying is, we're talking about as a long-term strategy. Where are you going with this? And how does that go from there? And I think that's a really interesting one going ahead.
So I think they're going to replicate the same sort of surfaces for that South Africa series, right? Because South Africa might have a few good spinners up their sleeve, but their batters don't really play spin that well. It'll be interesting to see what they do when Sri Lanka tour, right? Because they have good batters versus spin. They play spin really well. Arguably, they play spin better than Pakistan. There was a conversation going on our Good Areas chat where people were contemplating who's the better team versus spin. Is it Sri Lanka or Pakistan? And I don't know the answer to that entirely. But they've got Prabha Jayasuriya as well, who might be a handful on his own. So that's where things get tricky. If you remember versus Bangladesh, they didn't want to produce turners. They were going for seam-friendly surfaces and then ended up producing a flat-ish deck on which Bangladesh just kept things simple and destroyed Pakistan. So maybe that's given them some PTSD. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's what I mean. I think if you're talking about Akib ball as a panic move, which it is, right? Yes. If you're talking about the disorganized chaos and everything, that's fine. I just think at a certain point, you just need to take a slight step back, right? And go, we've won 3 test matches in a row now. Like, if you're being really honest, the next test match, like, should be, if I was Shan Masood, I'd be like, can we get a more even surface? Let's see if we can also now beat teams on, if Sajid and Noman are this good, are they going to be this good on a flat wicket? We need to find it out against the West Indies, right? Rather than finding it out when South Africa turn up, right? Like, you want to know as much as you can, and you don't want to give the opposition a chance of winning when they won't always have that.
Especially in a test match, which is as dead rubber as dead rubbers get, right? It doesn't matter. So you can kind of try a few different things. The result isn't as important over here. And like you said, Pakistan are pound for pound a better test team than the West Indies. So they should still be able to find a way to win. But then my question to you is, how much of a say does Shan Masood have? Because from what we were told from last time when Dizzy was around, him and Shan were powerless, and Akib was like a dictator at top who was going to do as he pleases. So maybe if Shan Masood wants to go that direction, he has to go at night time to Multan, the stadium, and maybe like punch a hole in the greenhouse. Maybe that's what he should do.
Look, the thing with dictators is you can still talk to them. I know that sounds weird because obviously we don't prefer not to have them, but like I don't know if you see, this is so off brand, but like, so TikTok is apparently about to be banned in America. It's not quite a ban, but that's what they're calling it.
Also, sorry, I'm about to cut you, but completely random thought. Why has no food outlet made penis-shaped potatoes and called them dictators yet? Because that should happen.
So TikTok's about to be banned in America. And the last time Donald Trump was really, really upset about it. And then recently, he worked out that he was quite successful on TikTok because the algorithm I think the algorithm almost suits right wing more than left wing, you know, having followed TikTok a little bit. But either way, the algorithm helped him and he did very well. But the point is, at this point, can you not go to Akib and just be like, think of how much of a genius you would be if we could also win when we needed to on, I don't even want to say flat pitches. I just want a wicket where it's not random. So when they need to play on these random wickets, they can, right? Yeah. And let's hope they, you know, I mean, they're really entertaining for all 5 minutes of this match. It was entertaining. But then do we also have another gear that we can go to? That's what I would be doing if I was playing.
Also, I think what they can kind of do to better this situation or improve in this situation is that, sure, produce a rank turner, but I'm not too comfortable with the idea that the ball is bouncing a bit higher from one end and it's staying low on the other. Yeah. I feel like that doesn't make for great, you know, reading.
No, as we said before, that's where you should. If the ICC did pitch ratings correctly, that's where they should be coming in and going, look, guys, we're not worried about the spin. You can't have one end bouncing and one end not bouncing. And because you guys went to a position to make it an extreme pitch, that's why that has happened. Do you know what I mean? That isn't a natural thing. Sometimes it just happens a little bit and there's variation between two ends. We understand that. But this is because they friggin' hothoused the whole thing. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to make an extreme pitch, whether you be in India or South Africa or Pakistan, you're going to do it for a specific reason, and it goes wrong, you get penalized, right?
Yeah.
The Sydney one, when the Sydney wicket went wrong, I'm a little bit more on the SCG side of things, that they were trying to make a more entertaining pitch, and it went to shit, right?
Yeah.
That one I'm a little bit more like, okay, you get one warning on that one, but that's it. If you try and do it again and it's shit, well, then you're just doing the wrong thing and you need to make a better wicket. But when it comes to something like this, if you're like, we're going to make our wickets rag sideways, and because of that, one end goes subterranean, right? Then that's just not proper. A proper Test match international wicket, right? Like that. There's an error there, and I'm not saying that it's unsafe or anything, or but it doesn't get a positive mark on a pitch preparation, right? Like it should be getting, at the best par and probably slightly under par. And also I think we need to normalize that in Test cricket. Like so many boards get so upset, and it's like, well, wait a minute, not every wicket can it be above par, can it? Par should be the median wicket. Like a lot of wickets should actually be slightly under par, but they're fine. We're okay with it. We're just telling you we didn't think it was as good as it could have been.
Also, clearly they did something more to the surface, because even after greenhousing it, you don't expect the surface to look different colors, right? It was evident that both the ends had been roughed up, and maybe they'd been roughed up differently. I don't know what sort of pitch doctoring went behind the scenes, but it was interesting to say the least. And I'm just curious to see if they reuse the surface for the second test and 80 is a par score.
No, that's a good one. So I've got a couple of more questions. A couple of West Indies questions for you. So what happened? Is Gudakesh gone?
Yeah, I mean, this was a surface in which he was supposed to torment Pakistan, and I had him as highest wicket taker of the series. And my logic was correct. I said that Sajid Abrar and Noman might share the spoils over here, and one West Indian spinner who I thought was Moti might take all the wickets. That spinner wasn't Moti, that was Warrican, who took 10 for. Yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for him. And if he can't make it work in the next test, that might be the last test that Moti plays for the West Indies. Because, if you can't get wickets on a Turner, then what are you supposed to do?
He's just been struggling. I would say almost since the T20 World Cup. I wonder if he's just got an injury, right? Like if it's something as simple as he just looks, he does. Before that, he really did look like someone who was about to become the best spinner in the world. And since then, he's looked a little bit like me, which is just subpar. Just subpar. Okay, so we got Moti out of the way. What was Alec Athanas's innings like in the second knock?
It was a really, really smart inning. So it was a fighting knock, but a brisk one. So a different kind of fight. He was deploying the reverse sweep a lot and very, very efficiently. So that's what he was doing.
I don't think I've seen him do that all that much.
Yeah, well, you need to go and check the highlights, because I can count at least like 4 different boundaries which he got off the reverse, and that was like his pet shot in this innings. And then he plays well when he rocks back. And I'm not saying heaves over mid-wicket. Generally, even through the offside, that's what Alec Athanas does well. And even prior to the series, or the start of the series, he was their best batter, I feel, in terms of talent and even pedigree, because he's done all right. If you look at his debut test versus India, he was good. And, his stock has been rising.
I think he's probably their best player against spin. I haven't looked at the stats over the last couple of years, but I have some issues with him against pace at times. But if I remember taking a lot of notes on him, I think it was that series against India, but also somewhere else I saw him play. So I've got a bunch of notes on him. I think he shapes up all right against spin.
Yeah. You've got the scorecard open? How many balls did his 55 come from? Was it like 60, 62? Can't be more than that.
68. Yeah, so 80 strike rate.
Yeah.
So they were bowled out for
1 point.
They were bowled out for 137 at 123, and they went at 3.36 and 5 point whatever it was. I mean, good on them. If you got to get shit on quickly, I say. Which is also what I think Hitler used to say to his missus, but that's a different conversation.
I mean, honestly, I feel like after the first innings on this sort of surface, you have to chance your arm a bit, or you have to be smart about things, and sweeping and reverse sweeping is always a good idea. Yeah. And I mean, Shan Masood's innings might be a good template for both teams on how they should go about things, second innings onwards. That's what I feel, because Shan, we've talked about this earlier as well. He's smart in the sense that if I'm just going to keep blocking in and get out, I might as well, play some shots. And over here on this sort of track where it is, it's a shootout, I feel like if you come down the track versus spinners and try to hit attacking shots, that's probably your best bet. Perhaps not in the first innings, but after that, I feel like there's nowhere else to go. Here's another interesting thing for you. You know how we always review these tests and I tell you how many catches were dropped? None. 0 in this test match. And how often do we ever get that? That
by
never
both
happens.
teams?
Yes. Not a single catch was dropped. And there were some spectacular catches, like Salman Ali Agha plucked out one from thin air in the slips. It was an absolute screamer. Sajid Khan took a one-handed catch as well off his own bowling. And then I know Joshua De Silva didn't play and Tivin Imlach didn't get any runs, but he kept exceptionally well. His keeping was on point in this test. So that's another positive in addition to Warrican and Athanaze that West Indies can take forward.
Just counting. So about half the dismissals were bowled LB or run out. So that is a higher percentage. But as you were saying before, if the wicket was keeping a little bit low, I think that's fair enough. Yeah. But that is a higher percentage than I think you would normally see. If you got that, it's going to happen. But that is a remarkable thing. Oh, I've got one last question. So obviously Warrican, I said that he should be quite good, and he's bowled well, but it looks awesome. I'm just going on the stats here. He went at 1.77 runs and over in a game where both teams scored pretty quickly all the way through. It was certainly over threes all the way through. Was he just landing on a spot and ragging it?
Yeah, basically that's what he did second innings. I thought he was a bit wayward and didn't really know how to bowl on this surface in the first innings, even though he got a 3-for. But ultimately, look, his 7 for 32 are the best figures for an away spinner in history in Pakistan. In test matches in Pakistan. So that's a very, very commendable effort nonetheless. And like, just go and watch highlights of his batting innings. I want you to watch the back of the bat reverse sweep, because first I thought it might have been a mistake. And then I was like, oh, this is so intentional. He's doing this. This is his shot. I was really, really enterprised by that.
So
anyway,
Warner used to play a back of the back reverse sweep. Do you remember?
Yes, but every third delivery, Jarrod?
No, but they made a bat for him. Do you remember? They made a bat so he could reverse with the other side of his bat. I never quite got the point of it, but I suppose it stops you switching it around. Mash has just asked you if the second test is going to be on the same wicket. It can't be, can it?
No. It can't possibly be that. The only reason why they reused the surface in the England series is because it was as flat a deck as you could have imagined, right? The only flatter deck than that was the Rawalpindi surface versus Australia. That first test match, which had like 14 wickets in total. So I think that was the only reason why they reused that surface, and Cameron Ponsonby could have wished for something else, and he chose this. No, that will not happen. But Mash, expect a very similar surface for the second test match as well, because I'm pretty sure they're going to use the same greenhouse. The surface can't get baked, right? Because there is no sun these days in Pakistan. There's lots of fog, and it's winter time.
Is it fog or smog?
That might be fog. So Lahore has fog because of like their dense population and pollution. But I
just wondered.
the one that we saw in Multan was probably fog. Look, if it was smog, Jarrod, they wouldn't have been able to actually host the test match.
It's up. Dharmasala also has fog that stops play, doesn't it? I'm trying to think if there's any other grounds in the world that have it. They're the only ones that I could kind of think of. There must be another ground as well. Like, I don't think it happens in like Kandy or anything. And I've never seen it happen in any of the other high grounds in like South Africa, like Centurion or Joburg. I mean, it might have, but I can't think of any. But Dharamshala, we've had it a couple. Yeah.
This time of the year, Lahore gets really, really bad, but that's why they don't really host any test matches over there in this particular period. Look, I don't know if the fog will subside or not, but it's going to be a result game. That's for sure. And I don't see Pakistan making any changes to their lineup. Although you could make an argument that, do you need a seamer at all on this sort of surface? Actually, that brings me to the earlier part of this podcast where Varun and I were confused on whether or not this is like a seam-friendly rank turner, because Jaden Seals, he came and he got that ball to seam, and in his first spell, 9-over spell, mind you, he took 3 for 19, ended up with 3 for 27, and when Pakistan were 46 for 4, 3 of those wickets had fallen to pace. So Jaden Seals is very close to being a generational talent in my eyes. He's metronomic. He can crank it up. I love the way he kind of goes about his cricket. His approach is very aggressive. I like him, right? And look at some of those dismissals. The one that got Kamran Ghulam seemed like 1.83 degrees or something. It was ridiculous, right? So like one bone that I have to pick with rank turners is that the game gets too one-sided towards one skill.
Yep.
So at least over here, you saw Seamer do well, right? That's a plus.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously Pakistan saw the pitch a little bit differently, but I think if you're an overseas side, you still have to use your strengths, and also like they don't have 2 plug and play spinners. Like I think Warrican probably is that at the moment, but Amoti, as I've said, I maybe played a couple of okay games against England at times, but still got hammered against England a couple of times.
Moti got Modi got out-bowled by Kevin Sinclair, and that's not a good sign, right? Like,
What
that's
was
basically it.
what was Kevin Sinclair's bowling like? Nothing.
So he actually got 2 wickets in the first innings, and they were very important ones, right? He got both of South and Rizwan, and they were like the one that got South was a ripper, right? No one can be playing that ball, and he was turning it a mile. And Kevin Sinclair is not a frontline spinner. So that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, that you don't need to be an exceptional bowler to be able to be successful on this sort of surface, which does bring the opposition into the game. They can load their team with spin bowling all-rounders, for instance, and get some perches out of that. So it's an interesting approach. I think all Pakistan fans will take this just because no one wants to go back to the flat decks, right? That is torture.
Yeah. No one is suggesting that. No one.
And people time and again keep asking me, can this backfire? It can inherently this surface can backfire. India is a very good example of that. So I mean, that's really all there is to it. So I mean, let's see what the second test has to offer. And it's a lull period in test cricket, but luckily enough for us, there's this series going on, and then we'll have Australia, Sri Lanka, which I mean,
and the women's Ashes as well.
Yes, and we definitely should be covering that. So yeah, I mean, do we have any super chats, Varun, that we can take before we kind of end this? I think we do have a couple. Yeah, so let's go to Rohit Kumar Jha. And he asks, may sound like the stupidest question ever, but why don't batters wear caps instead of helmets while facing spinners? It gives a better vision. We saw how Dravid, Sangakkara, etc. all wore caps in yesteryears. Might have helped the West Indies. You could top edge the ball to your face. That's my first thought.
In a world where people spinners are quicker and the sweep shot is more prevalent and the reverse sweep is more prevalent, that's why it's the top edges to your face. But it's also, you talk to a lot of younger batters now, they've never batted without a helmet, right? It's not as common now. You know, I probably grew up in the era that was kind of half helmet, half not helmet. And
well, you probably grew up in the era where you had the fiberglass helmets, which I absolutely love.
No, my first helmet was like the helmet design that we have now. So but I played against guys who had those kinds of helmets. You know, the big old, the wraparound visor with the air holes in them. Like I played against, we had one of those at our club. So it was right on that era. But when I played, you only had to wear your helmet until the fast bowlers were off, right? And so generally what we would do is we'd wear them for about 6 overs. And, you know, if I went in to open the batting, and then I'd just take it off, and that no one ever complained. Even the generation after me, like I was under 16s, by under 12s, they were already bringing in regulations in Australia that you had to wear a helmet in junior cricket the whole time. That's not the case in all cricket cultures, of course, but a lot of cricket cultures will say now that you have to wear a helmet. In England, I know English professional cricketer is allowed to bat without a helmet, men's or women's. As far as I'm aware, in any format that they play in. So if they're in if they go off to play somewhere else and they've got a contract, I still think they have to wear a helmet. I could be wrong about this. There's insurance things. Yeah. I mean, once you do that, the whole idea of it's not like taking the helmet off makes you bat better against spin. There's a reason why you don't want to wear a helmet against spin, and that's because if it's 40 degrees and it's sweating and you end up like, Matt Hayden or Daryl Mitchell and, you're wet. Like, I get that side of it. But I never took the helmet off because it was too hot, right? I just took the helmet off because I didn't have to wear a helmet. And so, and allowed me, probably I would say the players who probably in that brief era that I was kind of in. So I would say someone who was between the age of 15 and actually maybe even 10 and 25, between the ages of 1986 through to 2000. I actually think they probably played the short ball quite well because they had the combination of both, right? So they felt that they could still attack a little bit more. So Ricky Ponting really is the last player not to wear a helmet, right? As far as he was facing top level seam bowling without a helmet after Richie Richardson had put on the helmet and after Viv Richards had retired. And me and Raul Driver talked about this a lot for my book of like, is that what it is? It's a combination because he felt comfortable enough to go on the front foot in a way that older players didn't, right? But he also didn't get hit all that much, right? Compared to modern players who get hit all the time. So it's a weird one, but helmets are here to stay. We're only going to see more of them.
Yep.
A couple more Phil Hughes type incidents. I probably changed helmet design, but I think it's the second crucial thing is, and we're already seeing this with Will Pekoski, is we're going to see a lot more settlements between cricket
Yeah.
boards. And that is why we will see more helmets and not fewer coming into the
Also,
future.
just to close off on this, Rohit, if there was like consistent bounce, I can still see your point. But like on inconsistent or with inconsistent bounce,
Yeah, that's a
you're
good
really,
point too.
signing your death wish because it could easily top edge towards your face. Anyway, final super chat of the day coming from Samit Khan. It's actually completely unrelated, which I like. He says Greg Barclay's call for West Indies cricket's breakup feels colonial. It's West Indies' decision. If disbanded, how competitive would new teams be across formats? We've spoken about this like 5 times on this podcast, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm on the super chats now, so I can't see Mash, but Mash has probably done this 28 times if we've done it 5 times, right? So there's a couple of things here. As far as I'm aware, Greg Barclay did not ask for the Ireland cricket team to be split up.
That's true.
Right? And that, to me, if you want to ask whether it's a colonial thing, it does ring a couple of alarm bells when it's just like the West Indies should break up. When people start telling me that Ireland should break up, I'll be okay with the fact that West Indies should be broken up. But if Ireland can play as 2 countries and no one has any issue with it, then shut the fuck up. Not you.
Also,
Behram,
England and Wales? Anyone?
Do you know what I mean? And also, we had East Africa in a World Cup as well. So that would be my first thing. And what Samid is saying here is correct, though. It is West Indies' decision. Greg Barclay has nothing to do with it, as far as I'm concerned. How competitive would new teams be across formats? This is something that I know me and Mash have covered before. If you've got 16 teams in a World Cup, you might get 1 or 2 West Indian sides in it. I don't think the West Indies are any of the West Indian islands are massively more talented than, say, Scotland. Right? They barely beat Scotland as a collected West Indies, right? There may be maybe Barbados at their best, although I'm not sure what format Barbados would be at their best in. Guyana and Trinidad have had some, good periods, and obviously Jamaica. But are there any of those sides in the best 15 in any of the 3 formats right now? There have been times when they have been. All right, I reckon the old Trinidad sides would have done pretty well in the early days of T20 internationals. So I'm not saying it's never happened. Barbados at one stage was about 9 of the test players anyway, so it basically was Barbados on their own. But yeah, and then of course the other issue is it's fine if those teams are fully fit, but if 1 or 2 of their best players are injured, the backups are going to be a lot further back. So I honestly think it would be very hard for and having watched the Super 50 tournament, I don't know how any of the West Indies sides would make it into the 50 over World Cup because they do not play 50 over cricket in a way that gives me any strength of confidence in the way they play. T20 cricket, a little bit more interested. Test cricket, I'm a little bit more interested in where they end up. But that's the other issue, right? Shouldn't the West Indies sides, after everything they have done for our game, get test status? And then who do you give it to? Do you just give it to the Big 4 and fuck off everyone else?
It's true.
Do you know what I mean? And then the Windward Islands, I think, don't the Windward Islands, and there's another one, I've forgotten the other one. He might be in the chat, Mash. Yeah, they play as, there are teams that play as a collection, even within West Indies cricket. So this is going to blow some people's mind, but you have a collected bunch of different nations, and then you have some smaller islands that band together for another first-class team, because if you had first-class teams from each individual nation or island, it would be too weak for them to be able to even play in some of those other levels, right? So you have bandings within that. So if it's so tricky. You're really like, will we ever have another Darren Sammy if that is the case, right? And I'm trying to think. There's someone else as well. Andre Fletcher.
This guy Alec Athanaze is from what? Dominica?
Yeah. Also, the Antiguan cricketers. They're not in the Big 4 that we just mentioned a minute ago. They don't have a CPL side, right? Like we know that there are some. There's some good cricketers coming through there before. So it's a really tricky one, and I don't think it should be made by an old guy from New Zealand personally. But I do think that West Indies have to make that decision. If they decide that maybe one of the two, maybe a couple of teams just go, do you know what? We still believe in the West Indies. We want to go out on their own. I respect that as well.
So, I mean, you already have the CPL in which this happens. And the other side of this coin, which Vikrant Gupta, Indian sports broadcaster, brought up was, are the West Indies motivated enough? So I think that's utter bullshit. You've got the rally around the West Indies anthem, and it means something to play for the West Indies. Go watch Fire in Babylon and all that stuff. And if anyone is judging this by motivation, let me just tell you that skill matters more. And when you assemble the best players from each island, you have better odds of winning things, right? You could be
we would
completely unmotivated and be good and win things.
we were told in the early 2000s that was a big thing. That thing of they don't play for the West Indies and all this sort of stuff. Then they won 2 back-to-back World Cups, right? And the women also won one in the middle of all that, of course. Where are all those people who said that they didn't want to play for the West Indies? And there are people who play cricket for Australia and England and India and New Zealand or whatever who feel more, there are Yorkshire players who probably have as much, if not more, pride playing for Yorkshire than they do for England, right? Like,
look at your example. You get all excited about Victoria.
Way more excited. I would, it's not that I wouldn't want to go on and play at the other level, but I'm probably more likely to take a bullet for, the Democratic Republic of Victoria than I am for Australia, right? Like that's just a truthful statement. And I'm not the only person in the world who feels that way. Like some people feel that about their hometown or their ethnicity or their their race or their community or their whatever, right? Like some people like their family more than they do their nationality. So that sort of stuff doesn't make sense. But there are inherent flaws with West Indies cricket. Like if you're Barbados, who is it recently? Guyana, who got all that oil money, right?
Yeah.
Does it actually help Guyana to pump a bunch, pardon the pun, to punch a bunch of that oil money, right, into Guyanese cricketers if they're going to go off and actually represent West Indies or franchise players, teams? I think that's an argument, and I've heard that before. I've talked to people within West Indian governments, right? Of different islands, and they have taken me aside. It's like, look, we get what you're saying, but does it matter that much to us? And I understand that because that is a slightly different argument to be said. But overall, when it comes down to it, it kind of matters, right? Like West Indies still matters, and when it doesn't, maybe they will break it up. But we're not about to see best case scenario, Guyana goes with all this money, and they've had a bunch of good players who haven't quite got to the level that I think they should have, but they have had a bunch of good players come through over the last couple of years. They got Shamar Joseph, they got Hetmeyer, they've got that all-rounder that always has the bad hamstrings. They've had a few other hitters. No, the other guy whose name I always forget. But they have had 7-8 players who are decent. You put a bunch of money in that and you really start to push them. Maybe you get to the point where they get to 9th or 10th best in the world. But that's a big difference to what we've seen with the West Indies. And so people have to decide on what they want, right? And if Guyana decide to do that, I would back them 100%, right? Even if they're wrong, the people have made that decision and the cricket board have made that decision, and that's fine.
Yeah. Also, I mean, sure, you could potentially get rid of all the island politics, but then if you aren't amongst the 10 best teams in the world, then maybe cricket just dies out in that region as well, right? So young kids would like to watch the West Indies do well in international cricket for them to even pick up the sport, right? There's so many
big
angles
thing
to this.
Yeah, when we talk about representation matters. If your team is not in the World Cup anymore, do you give a shit? Probably not, right? Like, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that kind of wraps things up. There's this one really fun comment by Abdullah Imran Nadeem who's saying Jarrod would die for Dhananjaya Stan, and I completely concur.
I haven't got that. I haven't got it framed yet. I need to go get that framed.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you to everybody for interacting with us in the comments section and for your super chats. Just a quick reminder, you can go to goodareas.co, not today, but like soon.
Yeah, and, don't get me started on the website. It will be goodareas.co will be back up. Sorry to everyone who's tried to use it recently.
Soon enough, but that is basically, or it could prove to be a one-stop shop for you guys where you can find all of our work, whether it be written content, podcasts, or videos. We'll be back soon enough with either footmarks or a quick picks or a red inker. We don't know that as of yet because we have run out of our bank. But anyway, all we can promise you is lots and lots of content. So yeah, have a good day, guys. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you soon enough. Goodbye.
And that is why Nasser Hussain decided to bowl first at the Gabba. And this all, of course, reminds me of Hitwicket, which is a mobile cricket strategy game that is all about making those tough decisions. Who do you want to send in as an opener when the asking rate is climbing? Do you go for the big hitter or the steady accumulator? Me, I like to throw in someone a little bit unorthodox. A bit of a wild card like the general that keeps the opposition guessing. And what about the bowling attack? Do you unleash your express pace early or hold back for the death overs? I'm always tempted to bring on a mystery spinner in the middle overs and just try and break a partnership. Hitwicket puts you in the captain's chair. You draft the squad and select the batting order and even decide when to use those game-changing abilities. Do you burn your 2x ability to chase down a big total or save it for a critical moment later on? It's strategic, it's addictive, and it's more nerve-wracking than facing a show-up actor bouncer. Give it a go. Download Hitwicket and see if you've got the tactical nous to win.